Welcome to Construction Champions Podcast, where we are burning the house down and rebuilding it twice a week. I'm your host, Ron Nussbaum, and I am here to help you become the champion that you're meant to be. Along with our amazing guests along the way, we will provide you with the resources, the latest and greatest. You will sit down with disruptors in the construction industry. And my goal from day one has always been to change the mindset around the construction industry. No more where we let the 3%. Welcome back, Construction Champions, to another episode. I'm your host, Ron Nussbaum, facilitator Ron Nussbaum. There we go. I messed that up. Periodically, I do. We changed it a few months ago, but here we are. Sometimes you just get stuck in this mindset, which is why we are here, to change your mindset on how you operate your construction business. And we don't do it by Ron just coming on here and rambling a bunch of stuff. What we do is we bring on experts. We bring on people that understand business, construction, all different realms of everything, so you can have the information to go be great at what you do. And today is no different. I have a fantastic guest that we actually got to guest on a podcast or other. We've been able to have some conversations, and now he's going to be on Construction Champions. So Darrin, it is fantastic to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. I'm certainly excited about being on the show, and I know we're going to have a great conversation.
Awesome, man. Well, before we dive into it, why don't you introduce yourself to all the construction champions out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Dr. Darrin Peppard, and I was a lifelong public school educator. I actually began my career as a middle school science teacher. I was a high school teacher, basketball coach, tennis coach, coached football. And then I was assistant principal. I was a high school principal for a long time and finished my public education career. And that was when I picked up the doctorate degree. My doctorate is in educational leadership. And I was a superintendent my last handful of years in public education. And now for the past 4.5 years, I run a company called Road to Awesome. And at Road to Awesome, our work is all about really empowering leaders, helping leaders to be really clear, to be extremely intentional with their work, and to genuinely be able to walk in their purpose. I do that in a lot of different ways. I'm a keynote speaker. I do a lot of work with helping individuals and teams grow, have really leaned heavily in the last couple of years into leadership team development, into helping leadership teams be more collaborative, be more on the same page, and ultimately, really hit their goals and finish projects on time, under budget, that type of thing. And it's been a pretty wild ride for somebody who was an educator for a very, very long time. And I still work with educators, do a lot of leadership consulting with schools and school districts around the country. But honestly, I work with people in really all walks of life, just helping them be the best leader they can be.
I love it. And it's why this is going to be a fantastic conversation today. And I'm going to dive right in there, and I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. And that is, what makes a construction champion?
Well, I think it goes back to what I just said a couple of minutes ago. You know this very, very well. And I think anybody who has ever stepped into a leadership role knows this really, really well. When you are no longer the person who's charged with doing the work, but rather the person who's charged with leading the work, that how you lead people is really challenging. It is something that takes a lot of work. So to me, a construction champion would be somebody who in their leadership role is extremely clear about what it is they expect, is extremely clear in how they communicate, and is extremely clear in the work that they are championing. Secondly, that they're super intentional with their time, their action, their communications to ensure that all of that work ultimately is coming together and moving forward in a productive way.
Mm, that is great, and I really I want to dive into that first part a little bit. The clarity around how we are as leaders. Like for some reason, it's looked at as you can be great leaders have clarity and they communicate that and they understand, but we try to create these gray spaces for some reason. Like I think it's because comfortability, we don't feel like we can really convey our message. What would you say to that, being that you live in the leadership order?
Yeah, I think again, I mean that level of clarity for me, I mean I mean it goes back to very early in my leadership career when I first became a principal. So I was an assistant principal in the same school that I became the principal. And my office was 40 feet down the hallway from my previous office. And Ron, it might as well have been 4,000 miles. The difference in what was expected of me and what I was supposed to be doing as the leader of that organization. It's everything from, casting that compelling vision. And that vision might be, like in my case as a principal, here's where I see my school in 9 months. In a construction project, it might be, here's where completion is, and we have to be crystal clear about what completion means. What exactly are we talking about? And man, that first 2 years, whew, I struggled.
Mm,
And I think I struggled the same way many people do. I was really good at being a teacher. And I was really good at being assistant principal. I mean, you give me my piece and man, I'm going to go crush it. But when I became the principal, that wasn't my responsibility. I mean, a lot of my responsibility is making sure everybody else is doing the work and that true leadership piece, which is helping everybody live out that vision I have for my organization. And when when leaders, no matter what it is that they are charged with leading, when they get lost in the weeds, when they get stuck down in the work, and that happens to all of us, then they tend to, and this certainly was my case, I lost sight of what it was I was trying to even accomplish. I was just getting through day by day by day, just, trying to check things off the list of, hey, I got this done, I got this done, I got this done. But that doesn't mean I was doing anything to inspire the people around me. I wasn't doing anything to continue to, clarify my expectations of others, give feedback to others, give them support. And honestly, for 2 years, I floundered. And so I think that I see it in, man, I see it in almost every leader that I work with that, you end up in the leadership role. And I'm sure this was true for you too. You end up in a leadership role because you absolutely kicked butt doing the work. But doing the work and leading the work are two different things. And so that's why I think for leaders, it's so important to just take that time. I call it balcony level leadership. So again, I was a coach. As a coach, we videoed games and I actually videoed practice. I mean, like I wanted video of everything because it gave me an opportunity to see what's really happening. And the video was always shot from the balcony. So I call it balcony level leadership. Let me get up out of the work and take a look down.
mm,
Okay, where am I clear? Where am I getting stuck? What am I missing? And when you're, I'll use my coach analogy. When you're down there on the floor in the heat of a game, you don't see everything. You need to be able to step away and take a look or have somebody else. In my case, I had a leadership coach as a principal when I started to discover this, having that ability to just take a pause and look around and see, okay, where am I stuck and where am I struggling and where am I excelling?
that is so I love the look back there, because as we talk about that, a lot of people, especially in construction, you feel like you work your way into this and it's such a hard transition. But what you did, like you knew you would eventually become the principal, and here it is. It's the same transition.
Yeah.
It's not like these are skills that you build. Like it's not like some people can seem like they're just born with it, but a lot of leadership is really just cutting your teeth and learning it and really just taking it on the nose until you figure it out.
Right. Well, it is in so many different ways. I'll give you a simple example. So I have a nephew who is in HVAC, and his work for the first probably 4 years he was an HVAC tech was all new build construction, and he was just putting in HVAC. That was his work, and he got promoted. He was really good at that, and he got promoted, and now he's leading a crew. And so he has this crew of a handful of different workers, and he's got multiple sites going at the same time. And he and I had dinner maybe about 2 months ago, and we were talking about that difference between just being really good at being the HVAC tech, the installer, and now you have to lead these crews. And one of the biggest pieces he was struggling with was just the whole leading people thing. It's one thing to say, okay, this is what we're installing here, and this thing is going over here, and this crew's going to be here on this day, and this crew's going to be there on that day. But it's also just it's that interpersonal communication and getting to know your people and understanding what it is that they want to do. I mean, is like I told him, my nephew's name is Cole. I told Cole, I said, when you first started, you probably didn't know you wanted to run a crew. You didn't know you were going to lead several crews, but you probably had some aspirations of where you wanted to go. Did anybody sit and have a conversation with you? And fortunately for him, yes, somebody did. And so it's understanding that interpersonal communication and getting to know the people around you and what it is that they're hoping for. And when you lean into that, then that's where all of a sudden the leading people piece starts to come out. That to me is like what's really important about that leadership role is it isn't just about this work needs to get done. It's how do you leverage your relationships with those people in order to ensure that it gets done.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I could tell horror stories all day long on how I learned all of this stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it's really, it comes down, great leaders are conversational. Like
Mhm.
they're having conversations, but they're not just talking to talk. Like they're having conversations to find things out, to figure out what does the chess game look like, and the people can tell when you're not having genuine conversations. And when we're trying to get to specific places and we're real pinpointing things instead of just out there having conversations that feed our ultimate purpose, that get us where we want to go, but does it come across as that? That's when you start to become this leader that people follow. People want to be involved because they feel like, oh, well, I remember talking to him about that like a couple months ago, and here we are, and something's happening around that when all you're doing's just out there getting a temperature, having these conversations, making people understand that there's not this disconnect between who you are and who they are, that we're on the same page, like we're fighting the same battle. We're just in different positions fighting that.
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about, and what I talked about a little bit too, but neither of us put the word on it, is probably one of the most overlooked leadership skills that's out there, and that's listening. The more leaders listen, the more they find out the information like you're talking about, the more they continue to build those relationships and they build trust among, whomever it is that's on their crew or a part of their team. Um, when and that to me, I mean, that was a huge lesson. And it took me a while to learn this one too, but the more that I would listen to my team, both when I was a principal, when I was a superintendent of a district, the more I listened to them, number one, the more valued they felt as a part of the team. It wasn't just, I'm driving this ship and this is what we're doing. It was, hey, I have a stake in this. I know that my leader genuinely cares about me and cares about my input. I am validated at work because he listens to me. And two, I think just the more effective we were as a collective team, because it wasn't one person owns the knowledge or one person holds the vision. It was we all collectively do. And you don't find that out as a leader if you're not spending time deeply listening to your people.
Mm. Yeah, and I think as leaders, we feel like we get it's not even the leader. Like you get this title and it's like, oh, I gotta be in my office, I gotta do whatever. And no, as we were developing young leaders and superintendents and stuff, and like I spent my mornings in the shop because like that is the only time everybody is there unless they're out on the road. Like people are coming and going. And I remember having the conversations with our young leaders of like, they're doing paperwork or they're doing whatever. And I'm like, now is the most valuable time. Like these guys, they're all going to leave and they'll be gone all day. We get an hour every morning where they're there. We need to be in front of them. We need to be having conversations. We need to be learning what do they need? What is going on out there? What are the problems, the roadblocks? Like we can't just because we now have this title be like, I have these requirements. Those requirements can happen when they need to happen, but you have to take advantage of when your people are around. When are they caught? When are they all in one place that you can get in front of them? And then it also creates this atmosphere where you're not something that is just sitting in an office.
Right. Well, and I would imagine too, Ron, with your varied background and different experiences. And I mean, I'm looking right at your builder comms, sign right there, over your shoulder. I would think even in builder comms, you've had to gain even more clarity as a leader because that organization, yes, you are the leader of the organization, but it's not like you are an expert at every single thing that goes into that business, right? I mean, maybe you're really, really good at 5 of the 8 things, but I mean, I don't know you extremely well, but you probably are not the software engineer who is developing and writing code. And if you are, you're probably not the one over on the business side of the house, understanding, everything to do with the books and everything to do with, how you're setting up your sales channels. And there's so many different moving parts to any business that nobody can be the single expert. And so, like what you're saying, when you bring that team together, I'm certain you're not just sitting there in a staff meeting of builder comms telling everybody, you go do this, you go do this, and you go do this. You probably spend 90% of that meeting listening to what they need, what their progress is, and helping everybody see, okay, here is how this all comes together to achieve the vision of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I would say my greatest leadership lesson in this journey of my life has been vision trumps all. Like that you can't be the expert at everything. You can't understand everything, but you can cast a vision that everybody can understand. You have to be able to communicate that. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And then you get the right people on the bus that can then execute on that. And you just have to have enough knowledge to hold them accountable. Like if you hire great people, semi understand what the outcomes should be of what they're actually doing, but you're giving them a vision of like, this is where we need to be. This is where we're headed. This is 5 years from now, 6 months from now. Like, this is where I need you to take it. That is where you move into what I like the realm of leadership. I think most people aspire to, but like they get lost along the way. But that is when you become the most effective. I found out like it's one of my strengths is being able to just captivate a vision. And it's just because I have clarity on it and I can communicate it. It's like, I'm not special. I just understand where we're going and I can say, this is where we're going to the people that can actually get it there.
Right. And then that takes you to the second half of what I said, which is being intentional. Now you're crystal clear. You can then show up every day intentional with how you're going to spend your time. Be really intentional with how you're going to communicate with people and be really intentional about your presence. Where will you show up each and every day? And you talked about it earlier. You're not just going to sit there in your office. I mean, there's this long standing phrase we've all heard in leadership: you can't lead from your office. So when you start to get really intentional about, these particular pieces this week are really at the top of my list, all while living that vision out loud. I'm going to be intentional with my time to be here, to be here, to be here, to make sure these things, get accomplished, make sure I can learn from everybody who's a part of this, make sure I can lean into the different spaces that I'm needed to provide support, to provide coaching, to provide, just whatever it is. Sometimes it's just cheerleading. Sometimes you just need to show up and go, man, you guys are crushing it. Just keep doing what you're doing. So that's why I say, back to kind of how I kicked it off, that a construction champion is has got a lot of clarity and is really intentional. Because when you put those two together, whew, that is the sweet science of leadership right there.
Yeah, and it's not hard to get there, but it is very hard. Like
Mhm.
I've read about every book out there you can possibly read on any of this stuff over the years. I've stepped in enough the potholes. It's why I love what you're doing, because you have the ability to help develop leaders. You've seen the potholes and you don't have to step in them. And like, we've talked about it before. Like, this is something that doesn't go away. Like, you are constantly evolving as a leader because your company consistently grows. There is something that's required of you. So it's not like Darrin comes in and it's a one-time fix. It's like, get over one hump to get over the next. And that's how I've always approached leadership: is what is required of me right now where I'm at, and then what's required of me in 6 months, 6 to 12 months, where I am going to need to be a different kind of leader. Because as everything evolves, as your career path evolves, what you're doing, different things are required of you, and you have to be willing to continue to learn.
Right. Well, and if you're instead that guy I was the first year or two as a building principal, where you're just trying to do everything for everybody, um, and that's who I was. That first year or two as a building principal, I just, holy cow, I was a firefighter. I mean, I was just running from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis. And Ron, 99% of them were not my crisis. I was just trying to help everybody else out. When you're doing that, everything you just said isn't possible. When you do get to that level of clarity, when you do step up on the balcony periodically and say, okay, here's where I am, then you can see those ebbs and flows that you're talking about. That, 6 months from now, I'm not going to be the leader I am today, because what is required of me is going to be a little bit different. My business is going to grow to a certain place where, hey, I'm going to have to be able to evolve as a leader. And you can't do that when you're just stuck down in the weeds. Or another leadership expert that I spend a lot of time with talks about just being in the leadership quicksand, where you just keep getting sucked in and sucked in and sucked in. When you're able to be clear and be intentional, it does allow you to stay ahead of the trends, and maybe, keep your eye on that horizon a little bit more, and be able to kind of forecast, like, okay, you know what, a year from now, 18 months from now, this is what's going to happen. Our business is going to scale to a level that we're not only going to, need to add employees, we're going to need to be able to add equipment, or we're going to have to onboard more software engineers, or we're going to have to look at new sales channels. And you can't be that leader who's up here trying to live this vision of, my business is going to keep growing and growing, when you're stuck down here doing stuff that you are paying people to do. Let them go do their thing, and you focus on living that vision out loud like you talk.
Yeah, it's amazing that you bring up like the firefighter thing, because being, coming through this word, understanding it, and then helping working with developing leaders, it's really like the first instincts people have when they start to move into those roles is like, I'm a firefighter. Instead of being a leader, they feel like that is how they lead. If they can just solve everybody's problem, there'll be the leader that the people need. But that is not what people don't need. A problem solver. They need somebody with absolute clarity that can communicate that to them.
100%. And so to me, this is that big fallacy of servant leadership. So, when I went through my master's program, so I have a master's in leadership and a doctorate in leadership. And man, in my master's program, they just hammered away on servant leadership. And I believe first and foremost, I believe 1,000% in servant leadership. But the misunderstanding that early career new leaders like you're talking about here, the misunderstanding is that servant leadership means I do it for them. And that's not what it is. What servant leadership is, what true great servant leadership is empowering others to solve their own problems and supporting them and coaching them and growing them. And I mean, I've probably got a dozen stories I could tell, but there were certainly several times where once I stepped out of that firefighter world and really started to be a true leader, that I would hear from members of my team, members of my staff that, hey, they'd stop me in the hallway, hey, Darrin, so I was struggling with something and here's how I solved it. And they were almost like just looking for validation, as opposed to early in my career, it was, hey, Darrin, I have a problem. And that was it. Like, okay, solve it for me. Once we got to that place where I had truly empowered them to solve their own problems, they were just coming to me with solutions and, I don't know, wanting some acknowledgement, which I was happy to provide and say, I love how you did that, or that was a great solution. I never would have come up with that, or what have you. But to me, that's the big, like, just total misunderstanding about servant leadership. It's not about solving everybody else's problems. It's about empowering them to solve their own.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And that reminds me of back so many years ago when I coined the phrase of buckets of water, not buckets of gasoline. If you're
I
bringing
love
me,
that
if
phrase.
you're
I've heard you say that before. I love
Yeah,
that one.
if you're bringing me buckets of gasoline, we don't have a conversation to be had. Bring me buckets of water and let's talk. Like
Yeah.
that, and then it caught on. Like people would be like, buckets of water. I'm just working on buckets of water, no gasoline, because we got plenty of fires. Like we work in construction. Like it's fire land. You can either do one or two things. You can throw a bucket of water on it, or you can throw a bucket of gasoline. We have a tendency too many times to throw gasoline on stuff because we don't even know until you start to change the mindset. We don't even know buckets of water is an option. Like we don't even know, like, oh,
Right.
we could put this out. Like, but that's how it is. That you empower people to do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that is just so right. I didn't mean to jump in the middle of you saying that, but man, I've heard you say that before, and I absolutely love that phrase because it's completely accurate. And I think a big piece too that I might not necessarily add to it, but just kind of throw in there, you know, bring a bucket of water, bring a bucket of gasoline, when early in your career, you don't listen, you immediately throw the gasoline. It's when you gain that clarity and you start to understand that, hey, let's just stop and listen for a second. So many early career leaders are just like, they can't wait to rush in and solve the problem. That they run in and solve a problem that wasn't even the problem in the first place because they're not even listening. So by just taking that little beat and listening and understanding what it is that people are asking about, that in and of itself sets the bucket of gasoline down and picks up the bucket of water. But what you're saying and what I love is you want people bringing that bucket of water with them when they come in, which I think is just fantastic. It's a great analogy. It really is. I could run on that one for hours.
You know what fascinates me about this conversation that we're having is, you're a high level leadership coach. And the entire time, what have we talked about? Develop like beginning level leaders where like how to, because like the highest level of leadership, that is what you do. Like what we have talked about, everybody listening might be thinking like, well, how do I become a better leader? Well, we're giving you the keys to the kingdom. It's to open, to take the roadblocks off of your entry level leaders and develop them into the leader that they need to be. Like that is what the next level is. That's why our conversation gets focused down here, because we've been there enough times that we understand is that the greatest thing a leader can do is to empower other leaders within their organizations, and that's where it really starts.
Well, and that's how you grow a strong organization. It isn't just about the leader at the top holding the power when everybody holds the power, when everybody has the opportunity to lead. Everybody has it in them to lead, but we have to be the ones who are empowering others to take that on and to see themselves as leaders.
Mm.
So often in all walks of life. I'll use my core experience in education, but you'll hear when I'll go in and work with a school, and I might ask somebody about the role that they have, and they'll say, "Well, I'm just a paraprofessional, or I'm just a teacher, or I'm just a custodian." Nah, that's a title. Being a leader means from my position, I'm empowered to make a difference in this organization. I'm empowered to make a decision that ultimately leads us to that vision that we all collectively share. And to your point, I think one of the biggest moral imperative we have as leaders is to grow other leaders. And again, I said it to kick this off, but that's how you grow a strong organization is to grow leadership through all
Mm.
levels. And yes, start at the bottom because if you can set them up for success, man, that whole thing is just going to continue to grow.
Yeah, and they're going to go through the same things you've already been through. So, like, you have the perfect experience to be able to help build those leaders in their organization. Because I know a lot of times people can just be like, "Well, I'm not the person," but chances are you had the same hurdles that they had as you have been developing. There is no better
Yep.
person to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my all-time favorite quotes. A person named Rory Vaden, who's an absolutely massive speaker in the self-development and in the leadership development space. But Rory Vaden once said, "We are uniquely positioned to help the person we used to be." So I was an early career leader who struggled like crazy. That's why I pour into the people I pour into now because, I did find my way through it. And I was fortunate. I had a leadership coach to take me through the process. It's why I do what I do now. But because I was that person, I can do exactly what you're saying. I can share some of the missteps that I had. I can share some of the successes. I can give some guidance and advice when people say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this." I can say, "Man, that's a great idea," or "Hey, have you thought about this?" Or even for that matter, "Yeah, no, I did that." You don't want to do that. It's not going to end well. Think about it this way. And that's where I guess, that's where the gray hair and the goatee, is my stamp of experience. And I can say, "Hey, think this through a little bit," or, "Yeah, absolutely step on the gas pedal. It's a great idea. Go get it done."
I love that you were provided a leadership coach, because I think it's so that the school did that. They set you up for success, because it is like we go through these elements where we grow through an organization, and it's really, especially in construction, it's trial by fire. There's no like where's the next steps, or how there's nobody to help work you through that, and to have that resource, that's absolutely amazing. And you look at like the biggest companies in the word or like they're CEOs and everything. These people all have business leadership coach. Like they have a
Yeah.
team that like that board has put around them to help them achieve the goals because they know this isn't just something that you miraculously get to and you just have the power.
Right. Well, I mean, anymore, it is insanely expensive to replace a leader, whether that's a CEO or that's a team leader or, that's a crew leader, whatever it is. When you're replacing leaders, you're setting your organization back, not just financially, you're also setting them back in terms of time, project completion, all of those types of things. So, the investment in a leadership coach or in somebody who does like what I do with leadership and individual, training, the keynote speaking and that kind of thing is a very, very small investment to pay to ultimately get, that continuity of leadership, to continue to grow and develop leadership, to expand leadership within your organization. And, at the time when my school district decided to bring leadership coaches in, we actually had hired a new superintendent and he came out of the business world. He was in corporate finance
Mm.
before he became a school district superintendent. And to him, leadership coaches were just a given. Everybody gets a coach. That's what we do. In the education space, that was a little bit of a new thing. And there were honestly, I think I worked in a district of I want to say 15 school buildings at the time. And most of my peers, Ron, they were insulted. They're like, how dare you
Ugh.
hire me a coach? Why would you hire a coach? Are you saying I'm not good at my job? And meanwhile, I'm like, oh, thank God, please bring it on. I know I need help. I'm not silly enough to think that I just know it all. Um, so it's become much, much more normal in the education space. And I know there's a variety of corporate spaces where it's kind of a given. And certainly in the work we do, I won't speak for you, but as an entrepreneur, I have three coaches. I have a coach for the business side. I have a coach for the speaking side, and I have a coach that helps us just like our own personal financing side of the business, and they're worth every bit of the work. I mean, what we pay for it comes back tenfold because when you have somebody that you can lean into, that you can pick up the phone, that you can shoot a text message to or whatever it is and just say, hey, I'm kind of stuck here, or hey, I'm wondering about this, or here's kind of where I'd like to be. My business coach is the one who's regularly, and it's good that he does this because I tend to get stuck working in the business, not on the business, but he'll pull me up about every 6 months and say, okay, let's go back to your strategic plan. What changes do we need to make to your strat plan for the next 6 months? And if he didn't do that, Ron, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't do that. So yeah, again, and the coaching is a thing I can riff on for hours and hours too, but it genuinely makes a difference.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You got to have the right people around you, and those people don't come free. Like I
So,
think that's like this misconception of like, oh, well, it's whatever, but like you just have to go find the person that you relate with that it will be able to be that leader for you, and then you just got to pay them. Like that's just what it is. Like
yeah,
there's no shortcut other than that. Like that's you can pay the hard tax, which I don't recommend anybody doing, because I've
no,
done it both ways. And I mean,
yeah,
even putting to other, uh, being especially since I moved into an entire different industry, like I put together a couple of different mentor teams over the last few years and contracted that for 6, 8 months, where like actually put together a team that had a lot more experience in what I'm doing to meet with me weekly or monthly to be able to be like, oh, almost like a board, but not really a board. Like you
mhm,
put together these groups of people that can just put you in your place. And you don't have to find people to put you in your place, but you have to find people that can help navigate the next layers of your life, or else you're just going to be where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you want to scale, if you want to grow, if you want to improve, you definitely have to surround yourself with people who can help you do that.
Yeah, and if you're a business owner, I mean, I would have to think like it's an amazing thing to have part of a comp plan. Like if I was, say, interviewing at construction businesses and one of them came with leadership or an executive coach or something, and the other one didn't, I mean, I would be like, that right there is probably worth double the salary that they're going to pay me to have that. Especially while you're operating within that business. So I people that would take offense to that, like you need to definitely reevaluate your stance.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, like I said, there were a whole bunch of other folks, that were part of our leadership team in that district that they were turned off to the fact that, how dare you hire a coach for me? And several were like, no, I just refuse. I won't work with a coach. So I know
Huh.
he didn't end up getting them coaches, but I know, even just after a year of me working with my coach, people were like, wow, like you're a different person. You're a different leader right now. And I attributed it to my coach, just, it was just so valuable to have somebody, bounce things off of me, give me some direction. But I also felt this level of accountability to him. Like I didn't want to let him down.
Mm.
I didn't want to get on the phone in 2 weeks with him and say, "Yeah, I haven't accomplished anything you challenged me to do." And I know I have a whole bunch that I work with that they feel that same way too. And they'll if they haven't gotten things accomplished, well, sometimes that happens, right? I mean, the work is the work, and sometimes things come at you. And I was on a call with somebody that I coach about 3 days ago, and yeah, they didn't get things done, and they're like, that's just what they led with. They're like, God, Darren, I hate to come on and tell you that I didn't get this accomplished, but like, no, that's not what it's about. But just feeling that sense of accountability to somebody else that hey, I'm gonna make sure that I stay focused on the things that matter. It's it was a game changer for me. It really was.
Yeah, it's I think the unsung hero of all of this being that I do consulting work. I have consultant like the accountability element is like as you become a leader, you're a business owner, like who you're not really accountable to anybody besides yourself. And bringing somebody in to be accountable to your IDs, your vision, where I mean, it doesn't even have to be a consultant or a coach, or if you just have somebody that you are literally their goal is to say, this is what you said you were going to do. You had a plan. Did you do it? Like the power of that is it's why people have so much success when they get the right people in their corner.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. It just and it doesn't even have to be like an individual. So there's a entrepreneur mastermind group that I'm a part of. And every week, we meet on Thursday, and if I put something on the board on a Monday, so I have already put my accountability stuff in, we're recording on a Monday. When I put my stuff in this morning, if on Thursday I'm not going to have my stuff done, I know when I come rolling in there to this group, I'm going to say to everybody, yeah, I didn't get this accomplished or whatever. And I mean, there's no financial accountability to that. There's no risk of losing my job to that. But I feel just as accountable to that group of people as I would, somebody who had paid me to do a job or something like that. Because you're right. That accountability partner, it really is impactful, and it helps, I think, just keep you a little bit more focused and keep you, you know, being intentional towards the work that you need to get done.
Yeah, man, absolutely. This has been a fantastic conversation today, man. I've loved it.
Yeah.
For all the listeners, if they wanted to connect with you, learn more about everything you do, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah. So I would say go to the website. So darrinpeppard.com. And you can hit everything there, gives you all kinds of information, get on our email list, contact us, any of those types of things. If you're more of a social media person, I'm Darrin M. Peppard on literally every platform. So LinkedIn is probably the best one to connect with me. That's the one that I probably spend the most time. But by all means, I'm on all of those, and you can always just shoot me an email, Darrin@roadtoawesome.net.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for taking the time and being on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Ron. This was a blast.
Awesome. All right, construction champions, another episode in the bag where we really dove into leadership. And like I referenced earlier, like a lot of it was talking about entry level leaders and development in that aspect. And like I said, as a business owner, you might be saying, well, how does this apply to me as I'm trying to lead this organization? And that's when you need to reframe the mindset. The reason why it goes to that is because that's the most powerful thing we can do as a leader, leading an organization. Like Darrin said, developing leaders within your organization is how you build long-term success, sustainability, all of this stuff. And like what he was talking about, maybe we need to get some of these people leadership coaches if you don't want to do it. Like we need to start thinking out of the box, because everything that works in the other sides of business work in construction. So like if you're trying to build a Fortune 500 size construction company, you should look at what Fortune 500 companies are doing, not what the nearest competitor a couple counties over is doing that you think might be bigger than you. We need to be focused on where we're going and how other companies have gotten there. One of the greatest things I have ever done while scaling a construction business is to not look at the nationwide competition, but to look at nationwide businesses doing the revenue we are and the revenue we want to go to start to put together a holistic perspective of what should we be doing as an organization if we took construction out of it. Because at the end of the day, that's just the service that we're offering. It's not even what we're building. We're building a business that has a lot of people in it and a lot of moving pieces. So we should be able to look outside and say, oh, this is what they're doing over here at 10 million. Why aren't we doing it here? Like these are critical questions that the construction industry as a whole needs to ask. And I'm telling you, I'm not the only one asking them. Your competitors and the people that are going to be your competitors are probably asking themselves these questions right now. So you have an opportunity to either get on the bandwagon and get headed where they're headed, or they're going to leave you behind, because they're going to pull all the great things from all over the place and build amazing organizations, which is what I want to see everybody that listens to this show do. So construction champions, until next time, be the champion you were meant to be.